topic I will be focusing on is hunger. My source is the fiction book Hunger by Knut Hamsun. The author's background is that he grew up on a farm in rural Norway, and he started school at 9 years old, which he only attended for a very short time. This book was originally published in 1899 and has since been translated by George Egerton. The book was originally written in Norwegian, and this edition was published in 2021 by Adolf A. Knopf. For part one of the book, the narrator walks the readers through his first part of the day. A key topic that resurfaces a lot throughout this novel is how hunger affects the narrator's motivation and happiness in life. To begin the novel, the narrator wakes up to start his day, and his first thought is about food. Through this part of the novel, the reader learns that the narrator is impoverished and without a job. Despite his situation, the narrator attempts to help other people with their financial situations and displays great generosity. Some examples of this generosity that are talked about throughout the narrator's morning: even without a dime to his name, the narrator pawns his waistcoat to get money for an old man asking for milk money. And later in the day, with this extra money that he had that he pawned, with the leftovers that he did not give to the old man, he paid extra and gave a large tip to a woman who served him bread and cheese. And even once all his money was spent, a woman in the hallway scoots over for him so he could have a little extra room to walk in the hallway, and he reached into his pocket to give her some change, but he didn't have any. However, this action shows that he still was very generous in wanting to give, even when he had very little or none. The importance of this act shows that people do not choose to be impoverished, and thus it goes against the stereotype that people who find support simply do not find support just because they do not want to work or provide for themselves. Some key features that are significant throughout this first part of the novel are the changes in moods before and after the narrator has a meal, the changes in behaviors after thinking about his hunger and the food, and changes in hopes before and after meals. The first passage reads, "It did me good. It was a long time since I had such a square meal, and, by degrees, I felt the same sated quiet steal over me that one feels after a good, long cry. My courage rose mightily. I could no longer be satisfied with writing an article about anything so simple and straight ahead as the crimes of futurity. That any ass might arrive at A simply deduct from history, I felt capable of much greater effort than that. I was in a fitting mood to overcome difficulties, and I decided on a treatise in 3 sections of philosophical cognition." The fact that this narrator starts his passage with comparing a meal to after a good long cry states that the period before this meal was the period of crime, which was an unpleasant feeling, and thus he is describing his hunger as being an unpleasant feeling. In addition, this meal is seen as a relief. With this relief, the narrator wants to write a more difficult article. This behavior shows that his motivation is increased and he feels more capable and powerful. In addition, with uplifting words, he shows that he has a higher self-esteem for himself. The phrase, "in a fitting mood to overcome difficulties," shows that the narrator's hope is growing. Through these 3 significances, the past, present, future are all displayed. The past is shown through his way without food. The present is shown how he is planning to be motivated, to be successful, and to write his novel. And the future is showing that he will feel successful and happy with a positive future after his article is written. This shows that once your hunger is satisfied, you are able to be more optimistic about your future, and thus overall showing that hunger can affect one's optimism. Passage 2 reads, "From the day in May when my ill luck began, I could so clearly notice my gradually increasing debility. I had become, as it were, too languid to control or lead myself whither I would go. A swarm of tiny noxious animals had bored away in my inner man and hollowed me out. The fact that he starts off this passage with describing things as ill, even though he's not talking about food or his hunger directly, shows that he is relating his life struggles to food, because being ill is a feeling and sensation related to feeling that hunger. Thus, it is showing that hunger is always in his mind and in his way that he is viewing his life. In addition, the fact that he used the word languid shows that he is having no energy, which is also related to not having any fuel or nutrients and to being hungry. With this languid and no energy feeling that he is seeing no improvements and has no motivation. Another significant thing that stood out to me was the fact that he used the phrase hollowed me out. Once again, he is not talking about food or being hungry in this passage. Yet the phrase hollowed me out relates to a feeling of hunger and emptiness, thus showing that when he is hungry, he is empty and he is hopeless. This feeling of hunger is seen as unavoidable, and even when he's thinking about other elements of his life, it is always present and affecting everything. Passage 3 reads, I had remarked so plainly that whenever I had been hungry for any length of time, it was just as if my brains ran quite gently out of my head and left me with a vacuum. My head grew light and far off, and I no longer felt its weight on my shoulders. I had a consciousness that my eyes stared far too widely open when I looked at anything. I sat there on the seat and pondered over all this, and grew more and more bitter against God for his prolonged inflictions. If he meant to draw me nearer to him, and make me better by exhausting me and placing obstacle after obstacle in my way, I could assure him he made a slight mistake. And, almost crying with defiance, I looked up toward heaven and told him so mentally, once and for all. In this passage, the author is experiencing extreme and excessive hunger. He is also experiencing an extreme and excessive loss of hope, thinking that he is no longer capable of tackling any obstacle. He uses the word exhausted to describe himself, and that is also a feeling related to hunger when you have no energy left. Thus, he's saying he cannot overcome any more obstacles. This is seen in comparison to passage 1, when he describes that after a meal, he's feeling capable and he's feeling motivated to do things. And he wants to make his article more difficult to write, thus creating an obstacle for himself. However, now with a new set in hunger, his capabilities are distorted and he no longer feels like he is able. He also uses the phrase, crying with defiance. As we also saw in passage 1, he recognizes a meal as the feeling of relief after a good long cry. Now, when he's having a feeling of excessive hunger and depression, he is stating that he is once again crying with defiance, thus connecting hunger to depression. This is showing that hunger affects not only one's physical health, but their mental health as well. My takeaways were that hunger can affect how one views their potential in life. I believe that everyone should be concerned about this topic because this topic can affect anyone at any time of their lives, and it is not a biased topic. It cannot choose who it affects based on race, religion, age, etc. It can truly affect everyone. In a way to help people experiencing hunger, we can look for solutions locally and globally. Locally, you can donate food and help support one another by eating food before the expiration date. Globally, you can help vote by passing bills that provide food and support to people who need. In addition, there can be bigger global tasks in managing the amount of food that is wasted. These real changes must be made on a governmental scale. With this, people will find the extra support they need to feed themselves, and thus, as seen in Hunger by Hampson, the people will have this extra motivation when they are fed, and they will be more productive members of society. And in hopes also seen in this novel, once they have supported themselves, they will use their generosity and support others.